Hello, in this video we're going to be talking about the spinal cord. So let's not waste any of your time. Let's get right to it. Now, when we're talking spinal cord, one of the things that we want to talk about right up front is the functions, and we want to tie those functions in to things that we've already seen and talked about as far as nervous tissue. But starting off with conduction. Now, conduction just is simply that process of getting the electrical impulse through the nervous system, nervous tissue. And that is simply just a reminder that that's a dendrite connecting with its soma and then onto the axon for the local action potential that we've already talked about, and down that axon to the synaptic cleft and the synaptic knob and on to the next dendrite. So that's that process of conduction. So one of the main functions is to get that electrical impulse, that signal, from the brain, get it out the central nervous system and out to the receptors or to the hypothalamus or wherever it needs to go. So that's the first one. Neural integration, that just simply means that the spinal cord is that center or that portion of the CNS that receives the information from all the receptors around, whether it's muscles, skin, whatever it may be, all those efferent, it's receiving the information from, and then it's also the motor output to all of the sensory receptors. So that's the neural integration. Locomotion. Locomotion reflexes, the 3 and 4, those are a lot of similar ideas. We know that when we talked about reflexes, we saw that not only is there, if you put your hand on a hot object, that you're going to pull it away, but there's also the antagonist reflexes to help you to stay balanced, especially when we saw it when it came with the foot. If you've got to pick your foot up real quick because you just stepped on something, that the brain says, man, we got to get off of that. There's reflex processes for your other leg and maybe even your arms to go out to help with balance, you don't fall over. But think about locomotion. Think about moving. I know when we walk across the room or we're jogging around a track, or for some of you, or up and down a court or wherever, just the movement. I mean, if you think about it, it's not just your brain telling one of your leg muscles to your foot to pick up, but it's the whole curling of the foot in a proper walk pattern, the association with the toes for balance, if you walk properly, it's heel to toe, that movement, the movement of the calf muscles, part of lifting everything up, the hamstrings portion of it, the muscles in the front, the knee, the hip, everything working in conjunction, and all those little signals have to be sent out. So it isn't just your brain saying, all right, left leg, your turn, right leg, your turn. No, it's all these individual little signals going to individual muscles to get this done. And it's an amazing aspect of the body, the complexity for just fine, simple motor controls. And of course, reflex we talked about, stereotyped. It's just the sensory receptors, and the spinal cord, boom, it's just a quick right there and back, pre-programmed, involuntary response to a stimulus. So super quick. All right, so the next thing we want to talk about is the structure of the spinal cord. And the amazing part of not only of how this is able to be, but the way your body protects it. If you think about looking at the picture of the skull there on the far right, that hole in the center of the skull that each of us have, that's where the brain stem comes out of. I mean, when we talk brains, next chapter we'll see more about this, but the brain and the brain stem that comes out of the skull area and down your body, as you can see they're about 45 centimeters long, just about almost 2 centimeters wide, so I think it says there thickness of your finger. But then it passes through the vertebrae is basically around it, and I added a picture of a vertebrae here right next to me. You can see that foramen, vertebrae foramen that the brainstem the spinal cord can be in. And when we look at a couple of slides from now, pictures from now, we're going to see how the spinal nerves branch out in another foramen. And anytime you see that word foramen, that just simply means a hole that something can use to gain access to outside of the skull or the bone area, in this case the vertebrae. But your extension of your brain travels down and we'll, like I said, we'll see that in our next chapter when we talk about brain. But that's just an extension of your brain, going down from. And of course, when we take a look at brains in a dissection, which isn't a super exciting one, because you're thinking, man, all this stuff we can see, but man, students are surprised when they open them up how little information there really is. I mean, you really can't see. It's like I've said in the past, when you open up a computer, you can clearly see the wires and the hard drive and the circuitry and everything, and you're like, okay, I can see how this computer works. But the brain is not that way. It's such a interesting device, for lack of a better term, because you just can't see all the incredible things it does. But as your spinal cord goes down through the vertebrae, as you can see there, vertebrae wrapped around it, kind of protecting it in some fashion. And then we're going to go over the number of vertebrae per section, and then the number of spinal nerves that go out. But you can see there's 31 pairs of nerves, and basically as you go down the spinal cord, they branch out, and of course then they supply the nervous system for that particular area. And at the end of this unit, when we look at the duratome, kind of mapped out where each of the nerves go to and what they supply for. Alright, and then looking at, in our next to last slide, next to last screen, looking at kind of the sections. And again, we'll talk more about this in depth, but this is just an introductory to the overview of the spinal cord. But you can see you've got your 5 areas. You've got your cervical, which is green there. Your cervical is going to supply the nerves, for the neck and the upper shoulders. And then you've got your thoracic, the orange section over there. Then your lumbar, the pink, and the sacrum, kind of the snakehead looking thing, if you've ever seen one. As far as anatomy class, which you certainly will this year. And then your coccygeal, your tailbone that you can feel down there, which is the beginning of a tail. If you were a dog or a cat or something with the tail, that's where it'd be extended from. But you've got these 5 regions that we're going to talk more about in depth for each one. The 2 things to think about here, there's 2 parts of the spinal cord that are enlarged because they really supply lots of stuff. And that's the green area, the cervical, is a little bit larger. One that's got to support the head, the skull. And that neck's really got to be nice and solid and firm. And then, of course, your lumbar, your lower back, which anybody, and you guys are way too young for this, but if you have older relatives that suffer from back situation, it's always right there in the lumbar area. If you when it comes to chairs, when it comes to back support. Lumbar support is something you always hear about. It's just a super important area as far as overall condition of the back. And the cauda equina that you can see there, that name is simply because the spine, when just looking at the spine in general, a real one, it kind of ends up, for some people, it looks like a horse's tail, and so that's where the cauda, or equine, that's a reference to horse. It looks like the end of a horse tail. To me, the sacrum looks more like the head of a long snake. But anyway, you see what you see, and so that's the different sections. So one more here. Alright, so again, this is what we've just kind of seen, but what we want to talk about here is the idea of the 31 spinal nerves that are branching out. Now when you look at the tall picture, you see those individual yellows. Those are the 31 spinal nerves that branch out. You can see a little bit of the kind of the rusty red, and that's the plexus as we're gonna see. But when you look at the smaller, finer picture, zoomed in picture, you can see 4 or 5 nerve fibers that contribute to the big nerve that is going out. Those are nerve fibers. The nerve is the rusty red area that's coming out of the spinal cord. That's what you see in the taller picture. You can slightly see a little part of the rusty red covering as it goes out, but that's the 31. The 31 is not the individual small ones going into the rusty red covering. It's the 31 that it references is the one big one that's coming out of and out to the rest of the body. And each section, each part of the spinal cord where one of those large nerves comes out of, that's called a segment of the spinal cord. Well, that's our video over the spinal cord general information. When we come back in there next time, we're going to be talking about spinal nerves. We'll see you then.